My dad can buy this whole court, so hurry up, old man." The words hit the air like a slap. I was sitting right here in Providence Municipal Court in my black robe with my hands folded on the bench. I have heard a lot in my years. I have heard anger. I have heard fear. I have heard lies that sounded smooth as butter. But this line had something else in it. It had pride, the kind of pride that makes a person think rules are only for other people. The young man who said it was 21 years old. He had a sharp haircut and shiny teeth. He wore a white designer hoodie that looked too clean to be real life. His watch was big and bright, like a little spotlight on his wrist. His sneakers were spotless, like they never touched a sidewalk. He leaned back like this room was his private lounge. Across from him sat an elderly man with both hands wrapped around a plain paper cup of water. He looked small in the chair. His jacket was old. His face had lines that looked like they were carved by years of work and worry. The gallery behind them went quiet. Even the people who always cough and shuffle stopped moving. I felt my jaw tighten. I felt my eyes narrow just a little. I didn't raise my voice yet. I didn't bang my gavel. I just looked at him and let the silence do its job. Because in my courtroom, silence is like a mirror. It shows you who you really are. If you believe justice should be equal for everyone, you'll want to see what happens next. The bailiff called the case in a clear voice. Case 2026 TR 4187, State of Rhode Island versus Mason Vale. Mason Vale stood slowly. He didn't look scared. He looked bored, like he was waiting for a valet to bring his car around. I looked down at the file in front of me. Then I looked back up at him. "Good morning," I said. "Mr. Vale, you are here for assault and reckless conduct tied to a driving incident. Do you understand why you're here?" Mason shrugged. He kept one hand in his pocket. "Yeah, some guy walked into me, that's it." I turned my eyes toward the elderly man. "Sir, please tell me your name." He cleared his throat like his voice had to travel through dust before it came out. "Harold Sutter, Your Honor." "Mr. Sutter," I said, "why are you in my courtroom today?" Harold held that cup tighter. Because I got hit, and because I was told I had to come, or the case might not move forward." His eyes flicked toward Mason, then back to me. I leaned forward a bit. "What do you do for work, Mr. Sutter?" "I used to drive a city bus," he said. 33 years. I retired 2 years ago. I do part-time work now. I clean offices at night, just a few nights a week." He said it like it wasn't a big deal, but I could hear what he wasn't saying. Retirement doesn't always mean rest. Sometimes it just means you're still working, only now your knees hurt more and your paycheck is smaller. "And why were you on the street that day?" I asked. Harold swallowed. "I was coming from the pharmacy. I needed my blood pressure medicine, my insurance. It changed, so I had to pay more. I was trying to get home before dark." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." Then I looked back at Mason. He rolled his eyes. It wasn't even a big roll. It was quick, like he did it 100 times a day. Like people talking about money problems was annoying background noise to him. I could see wealth all over him, not just the hoodie and watch. Even his skin looked like it never met stress. He smelled like expensive cologne, the kind that tries to tell the world, "I'm important." He glanced toward the back, where 2 men stood. One looked like private security. The other looked like a lawyer who didn't want to be here. Mason smirked. "Can we skip the sad story? I've got training later." I held my voice steady. "Mr. Vale, you are in a court of law. This is not a waiting room. This is not a stage. You will speak with respect." Mason lifted his hands like I was being unreasonable. "I'm just saying, we all know how this goes." A small wave moved through the gallery. Not loud, just little sounds. A woman sucked in her breath. A man whispered, "Wow." I watched Mason's face. I watched his eyes. I watched the way he looked at Harold like Harold was an object, not a person. "Mr. Vale," I said, "you have a chance today to tell the truth and take responsibility. Don't waste it." He gave me a lazy nod. Sure. That was the first disrespect. and I could already feel the storm building. I turned to the clerk. "Let's hear the report." The clerk read from the record. Incident occurred on Atwood Street, near a small grocery and crosswalk. Defendant's vehicle was a black SUV. Victim suffered a bruised hip, a cut on the forehead, and later reported dizziness. Mason snorted. "A bruise? Come on." I looked at him. "Mr. Vale, a bruise on a young athlete is one thing. A bruise on an elderly man can change his whole life." He tilted his head. "He's not that old." Harold's hands trembled slightly. I noticed it because I watch people. I watch details. Details tell the truth when mouths don't. I said, "Mr. Sutter, how old are you?" 74, he answered. Mason let out a short laugh. 74 and crossing streets like he's in a video game. That laugh was the minor disrespect, quick, sharp. And the room didn't like it. I didn't like it. But I stayed calm. Because I've learned something. If I get loud too fast, some people think they've won. They think they can turn it into a fight. So I kept my voice low. "Mr. Vale," I said, "you will not talk about a 74-year-old man like that in my courtroom." He stared back at me. "I'm just being real." "Real doesn't mean rude," I said. Then I nodded to the prosecutor. "Show me evidence number 1. The prosecutor stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Evidence 1 is a photo and a receipt record from a nearby corner store. The defendant entered the store 2 minutes after the incident. Security camera still frames show blood on the victim's forehead and the defendant holding a sports drink and lottery tickets." Mason's smile twitched. "So, I was thirsty." I looked at him. "You were thirsty." He nodded. "Yeah." "And you left an injured man on the street," I said. Mason shrugged again, but his shoulders were tighter now. "People were around. Someone would call." I turned to Harold. "Mr. Sutter, did someone call for help?" Harold shook his head. "Not right away. Folks were confused. Some thought I fell. Then I sat on the curb. I felt sick. I tried to stand and I couldn't." He paused. His voice got smaller. "I didn't want to make a scene." That line cut through me. I've seen that before. Some people get hurt and still try to stay quiet because they don't want trouble. They don't want attention. They don't want to be a burden. I said softly, "You never have to apologize for being hurt, Mr. Sutter." Mason scoffed. "Nobody's asking him to apologize." I looked right at Mason. "Then don't act like he should." The prosecutor continued. "The receipt shows the defendant also purchased a prepaid phone card." That got my attention. I tapped my finger once on the bench. "A prepaid phone card?" "Yes, Your Honor," the prosecutor said. "Purchased at 6:18 p.m., moments after the incident." Mason's lawyer shifted his weight. Mason's eyes flicked away from me, just for a second, and that second told me plenty. I said, "Mr. Vale, why did you buy a prepaid phone card right after this happened?" Mason shrugged again, but it wasn't smooth anymore. "My phone was acting up." I asked, "Was it acting up, or were you trying to make calls that don't show up easily?" He leaned forward now. "Is this really what we're doing? You're acting like I planned some big crime." I stayed steady. "Mr. Vale, when someone makes choices after an accident, those choices matter, especially when they show what's in their heart." That was confrontation number 1. He didn't like that, and he let me know. He looked toward his lawyer and whispered loud enough for others to hear. "This is why people hate courts. Old guys in robes acting like kings." The gallery reacted. A few heads snapped up. A man in the back muttered, "Watch your mouth." I lifted my hand. Quiet in the courtroom. Then I turned to Mason. "Mr. Vale, I don't act like a king. I act like a judge. And my job is to protect the public, including Mr. Sutter." Mason's lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client is under a lot of pressure. His father is a very public figure. There have been threats." Mason cut him off. "My dad's people can handle threats." I raised my eyebrows. "Your father's people?" Mason smirked, like he liked the sound of it. "Yeah, my father is Trent Vale. Everybody knows that." There it was. The name drop, the influence attempt, the idea that a famous last name is a shield. He said it like it was a magic spell. I looked at him for a long moment. Mr. Vale, I don't care if your father is famous. In my courtroom, you are not a last name. You are a person who made a choice. Mason laughed again, louder this time. Okay, Judge, sure. I felt the room lean in. The air got tight. I said, Prosecutor, show me evidence number 2. The prosecutor nodded. Evidence 2 is a printed record of messages sent from the defendant's phone to his friend, Chase Larkin, within 10 minutes of the incident. Mason's lawyer spoke fast. Your Honor, we object to... I held up my hand. I will allow it. Read the relevant parts. The prosecutor read slowly, each word landing heavy. Message at 6:21 p.m. I clipped an old dude. He's dramatic. Harold's face tightened. His eyes blinked fast. The prosecutor continued. Message at 6:22 p.m. If cops show up, say I was with you. A low murmur spread in the gallery, not loud enough to be a shout, but enough to feel like a wave. Then the prosecutor read the next message. Message at 6:24 p.m. Don't worry, Dad's team can shut it down. I watched Mason, his chin lifted, like he still thought he was untouchable. I said, Mr. Vale, did you send those messages? He looked at the paper like it offended him. People text stuff. It's not serious. Mr. Vale, I said, text messages are serious when they show your plan. He leaned forward and pointed slightly, not at me, but close enough. You're twisting it. This is all being blown up because of who I am. I asked, Who are you, Mr. Vale? He froze for a moment. Then he said, I'm someone who gets watched, someone who can't breathe without people recording it. I nodded once. So, you know what it feels like to be under pressure. He said, Exactly. I said, Then why did you turn around and pressure other people? His mouth opened, then closed. Then he snapped, Because that guy is trying to cash in. Harold flinched, like the words were thrown at him. I turned to Harold. Mr. Sutter, are you suing him? Harold shook his head fast. No, Your Honor. I wanted him to say he was sorry, and I wanted my medical bill covered. The ambulance was expensive. I looked at the prosecutor. Is there a civil suit? The prosecutor answered, No, Your Honor, none filed. I looked back at Mason. So your claim that he's cashing in is not based on fact. Mason lifted his shoulders again, but his face was red now. It's what people do. I said, No, Mr. Vale. It's what some people do, but you don't get to accuse a man with no proof just because it makes your conscience feel lighter. That was confrontation number 2, and that's when Mason decided to cross another line. He leaned back and said loud enough for the room, This court should be thanking my family. My dad brings money to this state. People like him keep places like this alive. The gallery erupted, not with yelling, but with disbelief sounds. Someone whispered, Did he really say that? Another person said, Oh my God. I felt my face change, not into anger like a fire, into something colder, a kind of disappointment that settles in your bones. I said, Prosecutor, evidence number 3. The prosecutor's voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. Evidence 3 is a video recorded by a high school student on a bus. The student's name is Lila Moreno. She was seated by the window. The video shows the moment of impact and the defendant's actions immediately after. Mason's lawyer stiffened. Mason's eyes widened. The prosecutor held up a tablet and approached the clerk, who placed it where I could see. I watched the video. I saw Harold stepping into the crosswalk. I saw him walking carefully like each step mattered. I saw the SUV roll forward too fast. I saw Harold's body jerk back, like a small tree hit by a strong wind. Then I saw Mason get out. He didn't run to help. He didn't kneel down. He looked around. He checked his own bumper. Then he walked up to Harold, and I heard Mason's voice in the video clear as day. Get up. Don't make this a thing. Harold's voice shaky. I'm dizzy. Mason's voice again. You're fine, here. And then I saw Mason hold out cash, not $20, not 50, a thick fold, like he was feeding a parking meter. The girl filming zoomed in, and in the video you could hear another voice, a woman on the bus saying, "He's trying to pay him off." Mason's voice came again, sharp now. "Take it, or you'll regret it." The room went dead quiet as the video ended. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence sit. I let it grow. Because in that silence, people hear their own thoughts. Then Mason exhaled hard, like he was annoyed we even watched it. And that's when he said the nuclear quote. He stood up without being asked. He looked at Harold, then at me, and he said, "Look, I offered him money. That's more than he deserves. If old people can't move fast, they should stay off the street." 10 seconds of silence followed. It was the kind of silence where you can hear a jacket zipper in the back row, where you can hear someone swallow. Then the gallery exploded, not into chaos, but into shock. People gasped. A woman said, "No." Someone else said, "That's evil." A man stood up like he couldn't sit anymore. My bailiff took one step forward, ready. I felt my face go still. I felt my eyes lock on Mason like a spotlight. Because in my courtroom, when someone says something like that, it stops being only about one bruise. It becomes about a person's soul. I spoke slowly. "Mr. Vale, sit down." Mason hesitated, like he wanted to test me. My voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "Sit down." He sat. I took a breath, and I began the lecture that would follow him longer than any headline ever could. "Mr. Vale," I said, "I want you to listen to me. Not to your lawyer, not to your thoughts, not to whatever story you tell yourself at night so you can sleep. I want you to listen to me." He stared at me with a tight jaw. I said, "You just told this court that Mr. Sutter is more than he deserves a handful of cash. You said old people should stay off the street. Those were your words, not mine." I leaned forward. "Do you know what a street is, Mr. Vale? It's not your driveway. It's not a private hallway for young bodies only. It's a shared place. It belongs to children, to mothers, to workers, to the elderly, to everyone." I paused and said his name again, clear and firm. "Mr. Vale, do you know what Mr. Sutter was doing? He was walking home with medicine. Medicine, not a trophy, not a luxury, medicine." Mason looked away. I didn't let him hide. "Mr. Vale," I said, "look at Mr. Sutter." Mason glanced at Harold like it hurt him. I asked, "What do you see?" Mason said, "A guy who got hit." I shook my head. "No, try again." He sighed. "An old man." I said, "You see a human being who worked for 33 years driving a city bus, a man who got up early so other people could get to work, a man who paid taxes, a man who served his community." I tapped the file gently. "And you saw him on the street, and instead of helping him, you treated him like a problem, like a stain you wanted to wipe away." Mason snapped. "I didn't mean it like that." I said, "But you did it like that." I let that hang. Then I asked, "Mr. Vale, you have a famous father. You have money. You have doors that open for you. Tell me something. When you walk into a room, how often do people tell you yes?" He didn't answer. I said, "Let me answer for you. A lot. People smile. People step aside. People laugh at jokes that aren't funny." I leaned closer. "And that can poison a person, Mr. Vale. It can make you think you are the sun and everyone else is just a shadow." The gallery stayed silent now, listening. I said his name again. "Mr. Vale, today you learned something hard. You learned that the street doesn't care who your father is, and this court doesn't care either." I turned my eyes to Harold for a moment. "Mr. Sutter, you sat there, and you didn't yell. You didn't curse. You didn't ask for revenge. You asked for respect." Then I turned back to Mason, "And you gave him cruelty instead." Mason's eyes flickered. For the first time I saw fear under his pride. I said, "I am not here to crush you. I am here to correct you. Because if nobody corrects you now, you will grow into a man who hurts people and calls it normal." I paused. Then I said, "And I'll tell you the truth, Mr. Vale. What you said about old people. One day, if you are lucky, you will be old too." Mason swallowed. I continued, "One day, Your knees may ache. One day, your hands may shake. One day, you may cross a street slowly, and on that day, you will pray that the world still sees you as a person. I let my voice soften but not weaken. Mr. Vale, the measure of a man is not his watch, not his car, not his last name. The measure of a man is how he treats the weak when he thinks nobody will stop him. I sat back. And today, I said quietly, I am stopping you. Now it was time for sentencing. I looked at the record. I looked at the evidence. I looked at the faces in the room. Then I spoke, clear and firm, stage by stage, so nobody could miss it. Mr. Vale, first, you will pay a financial penalty of $4,800. Mason's eyes widened. I continued. That includes a court fine, plus full repayment of Mr. Sutter's ambulance bill and follow-up clinic visits based on the statements already provided. Mason started to speak, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished. Second, I said, your driver's license is suspended for 6 months. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Mason shook his head like he couldn't believe it. I said, during those 6 months, you may not drive any vehicle. Not your SUV, not a friend's car, not a rental. Nothing. If you are caught driving, you will be taken into custody immediately. Third, I said, you will complete 220 hours of community service. Mason scoffed. That's insane. I looked at him. Mr. Vale, you don't get to call it insane when your choices put a 74-year-old man on a curb bleeding. I continued. Your community service will not be random. It will match what you did. Here are your exact terms. You will report every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the next 12 Saturdays at the Providence Senior Support Center. Mason blinked. Senior support what? I said. A place where elderly people go when life gets heavy. You will help serve breakfast. You will wipe tables. You will carry boxes. You will listen when they talk. The room stayed still. I added, you will also spend 2 evenings a week, Tuesday and Thursday, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for 8 weeks, assisting the mobility clinic at Harborview Rehab. Mason's face tightened. I have training. I said, then you will learn time management. That means you learn how to handle your responsibilities like an adult. Fourth, I said, public accountability. Mason's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? I answered in simple terms. It means you will own what you did in a way that helps others. You will write a handwritten apology to Mr. Sutter, not typed, handwritten, at least 2 full pages. Mason opened his mouth. I continued. And you will read it out loud to him in this courtroom on your review date. Then I said, you will also record a short public safety message, not a flashy video, no music, no jokes, 1 minute, plain words, approved by this court, about why you stop at crosswalks and why you don't treat people like obstacles. Mason muttered, this is humiliating. I said, good. Humility is what you've been missing. Then I looked at him hard. Now we address contempt. His lawyer stiffened. Your Honor. I held up my hand. Mr. Vale stood up in my courtroom and spoke in a way that attacked the dignity of another human being and the dignity of this court. Mason snapped, I'm being punished for words? I said, you are being punished for behavior. Words are part of behavior. I nodded once to the bailiff. The bailiff stepped forward. I could hear the soft jingle of the handcuffs as he took them out. Mason's face went pale. No, come on. I said, Mr. Vale, you will spend 48 hours in custody. The gallery went silent again, but this time it felt like relief, like the room could breathe. Mason looked at his lawyer, desperate. Call my dad. I looked at him. Mr. Vale, your dad is not on trial. You are. The bailiff placed Mason's hands behind his back. The metal cuffs clicked shut. Mason's shoulders sagged like a balloon losing air. I said, you will return to this court for a review hearing on March 20th, 2026 at 9 a.m. If you have complied, you will continue your service. If you have not, the penalties will increase. Mason tried one last move. He turned his head toward Harold and said, "You happy now?" Harold's voice was quiet, but it carried. "I didn't want you in cuffs, son. I wanted you to care." That line hit even Mason. I saw it. His eyes blinked. His throat moved. The bailiff let him out. After that day, I kept thinking about the look on Harold's face. Not anger, not victory, just tired hope. Weeks passed. On the review date, Mason came back into my courtroom. He looked different. No designer hoodie, no flashy watch. His hair was still neat, but his eyes were lower. He walked slower, like he finally understood that rooms have rules. He held a folder in both hands. I asked, "Mr. Vale, did you complete the first portion of your service?" He nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The supervisor from the senior center stood and spoke. He showed up on time. He cleaned. He helped. He didn't complain after the first day. I raised my eyebrows. After the first day? The supervisor smiled slightly. He complained the first day. A small ripple of laughter moved through the gallery. I looked at Mason. "Mr. Vale, did you learn anything?" He swallowed. "Yes." I said, "Tell me." He looked at Harold. "I learned people aren't in my way. They're just living." Harold sat there in his clean jacket, his forehead healed, his hands steadier than before. He listened like he was waiting to see if the words were real. Mason opened his folder. His hand shook a little. Then he read his handwritten apology. 2 full pages. His voice cracked once. He didn't try to hide it. When he finished, he looked at me. "I can't undo it, but I'm sorry." Harold nodded slowly. "Thank you." It wasn't a hug. It wasn't a movie ending. It was something more real. It was a small bridge built over a deep cut. When the courtroom emptied, I stayed behind for a moment, alone with my thoughts. I looked at the bench. I looked at the empty chairs. I listened to the quiet hum of the lights above. People ask me why I talk so much sometimes, why I lecture, why I don't just hand down punishment and move on. And my answer is simple, because punishment can stop a person for a day, but a lesson can stop them for a lifetime. In Providence Municipal Court, I see every kind of person, rich, poor, famous, unknown, and I try to remind them of one thing. Your name might open doors, but it won't open hearts. Respect does that. And in my courtroom, justice is not for sale. It's for everyone.